Hello, hello, hello. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, hello. Good evening. Hello, everyone. Hi. You are here tuning in either live or on playback to Inhale XL. My name is Rodney Diverlis. I'm so happy to see you all here, even though I can't even really see you, but I feel you and I feel your presence. We are so excited for today's chill, very chill session, chill vibes today. But before I begin, I want to take an acknowledgement and a thanks to where I am right now. So I'm currently in my living room turned studio, which is on Queen Street, which is in the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit River, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. I always find it interesting that this site has actually been a site of human activity for over a millennia. And we're sort of bound by this dish with one spoon, one palm treaty that the original caretakers of the land came to an agreement and recognized that although they were from many different nations, that this was a bountiful land and that they committed to sharing the resources together, to share the dish with one spoon. And I always find it really warming to know that centuries later, we are here still at this meeting place of people from many nations. And so I'm so grateful for my ancestors who were displanted to this continent. I'm so grateful for the original caretakers of the land, for allowing us in many ways to be here. And want to remind us all that it's our collective responsibility to honor, to protect, and to sustain this land. Welcome to the third and last event of Inhale XL's winter season. It's been such a full season, such great engagements, and we've been so thankful for you as an audience who's come and watched us weekly, whether you're watching us live or you're watching on playback through Across Boundaries' page. We're so grateful for you. But I'm so excited today. Today is our QTBIPOC poetry reading. We're about to get intimate. We're about to get real. We're about to get here with us. And I'm so thankful to welcome, so grateful to welcome Sarika Persaud, who she and her is a psychologist at Fordham University, New York. I should have said Dr. Sarika Persaud, who's also an adjunct professor of psychology at City University of New York. Sarika identifies as a queer Indo-Caribbean woman. She writes on decolonizing our understanding of spirituality, mental health, sexuality, and relationship issues, especially in the South Asian diaspora. So excited. Please help me welcome Sarika, Dr. Sarika. Hi, love. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing pretty good.
Oh,
it's a little warmer here than usual. It's getting warming up, springtime in New York.
Oh, yes. And so right before this call, we chatted around our different circumstances. We're just on the other side of the lake. Sarika's joining us from New York City, other side of the lake. So warm. It's warm here too. I mean, we share similar climates. It's after a long winter. It's sort of nice to come out of our holes.
Zip the coat a little bit.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. All right. Without further ado, I want to pass it on to you, love. The stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. So nice to, I can't see you, so it's nice to be here with you. So to tell you a little bit about what I'll be doing today, well, as Rodney mentioned, I am a psychologist and I'm also a poet. I'm a few other things as well, but let's stick to those two things for today. So I'll be starting with a poetry reading. I have written a book of poetry. It's all love poetry, and it's called Poems About a Song. And so I'll be reading some of that poetry. And I also wanted to tie it in with this other aspect of who I am as a psychologist and talk about what is love? What is the purpose of love? How do we come to our understanding of what it is? As a psychologist, in my work, I feel that understanding what love is central. I see that a lot of the pain that people go through is due to feeling a loss of love, whether that means it's from family, from friends, from even people you work with, from your community, from your country. And a lot of the thing that heals us is finding a way to accept love again, to find it, to look for it in the right places. So I just feel that love is so central to my work. And I felt that this would be a great opportunity for us to understand the experiential part of love. So I'll hopefully share that through my poetry, and to also delve a little bit deeper, to have a bit of self-inquiry from the more scientific side of me about really what is love? What are we talking about when we say we're falling in love? What might be the point of it? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and let's see. Okay, great. Okay, so beginning to talk about why do we love, an evolutionary, psychological, and philosophical explanation of love, and some poetry reading. So we'll start with the poetry reading. My book is called Poems About a Song. It is available on Amazon. If you, I've been told that some people internationally have some trouble sometimes finding it on Amazon, so you can always just shoot me an email and I'll make an arrangement with you to figure out how to get it to you if you do want to purchase it. Okay, so we'll start with my first poem here. And I also think when I'm talking about reflecting on the experience of feeling love, I think that's also reflected in the way that I read my poetry. It's hard for me to read my poetry. I think that sometimes I'll pick it up, and it's not that I have a less confidence about my writing or anything like that. It's more that I get placed in the moment again, the moment that is being relived through the poetry, or the moments of writing the poetry, and those feelings, like love can be intense, right? It can feel really overwhelming. It can also feel really scary. So sometimes when I'm reading and I see my words again, I feel like all that intensity come back to me. But I'm so happy to share that with all of you, because in some ways I'm feeling that right now, and I'm also feeling I'm feeling supported. Okay. Your fingers brushing carelessly past mine, not knowing what they do to me. What were they in a past life? The creator of someone's favorite song. The wings of a parrot set free from its cage, flying to perch on the branch of a tree in the jungle, having freedom, but not yet understanding what it is. Or were they the hands of a priest, pressing grace upon a sick person's forehead, somebody's grandmother or first child? A painter's hands, flecked with ultramarine, always faintly smelling of linseed oil and turpentine? But here, today, they could be no hands but yours. Okay, this next poem has a lot to do with this feeling of yearning. And it is so central to love for me. I was thinking today about how I don't really like watching rom-coms, which I know might be counterintuitive to the fact that I write so much about love, but I don't really like rom-coms. But I actually, really love Hindi cinema, and a lot of Indian films are very romantic in nature. And I was trying to understand, why do I not like Hollywood rom-coms, but I can watch almost any romantic Indian film? And I feel like what is so central to this South Asian artistic expression of love is yearning. There's always this deep, intense, I will wait for you, or this separation that can often be a part of love is so central to this cultural experience of love. And when I was writing this poem, I was thinking about that. I didn't grow up in India. I didn't even grow up in the Caribbean, but this cultural weight of yearning is something that still lives inside of me as such a big part of love. And also, as I was writing this, this moment, and when I was writing it, it's happening in America. And the symbols and the ways I navigate the moments talked about in the poem also in a way feel very New Yorker to me. All right, I'll share the poem. At 1 a.m., I'm certain this is the right time for longing. The mood hangs naked, diffuse in the nighttime air. The next day, I think longing is meant for 10 p.m., when I can't remember what happened today, just that I'm tired. But then maybe the right time is at 5 p.m. when my tea has gone cold, or at 4 p.m. when the water's boiling. I think of one afternoon we spent together. Eager to hide the yearning in my eyes, I turned my attention to carefully turning heaps of sugar into my coffee. You had none of your own. Your gaze lingered on my lips, even after I had drank from my cup. We said nothing about it. Relentlessly, the hands of the clock search in circles. Are there lonely evenings where you live? Do you think of me when the sun is low in the sky? I really love this one. I cannot say anything else about it because it makes me feel very happy, and so happy that it's hard to talk about. Okay. The streets were rivers that night. I caught a fragrance like glistening leaves and dark earth, a memory of you. The rain, your melody, all at once belonging to me, everyone, and no one. Sometimes also when I think about this poem, I think about how sometimes when you really love someone a lot, it's like you want to tell everyone about it, and then you also don't want anyone to know. And also, in one way to keep it secret, but in another way of like, this is mine, not wanting to share it. This one also, it makes me feel like passing out because of how it's so short. I think a lot of my poems are very short, but the intensity of there's like such intensity in the moment, at least for me, when I read it. There are only two people in this world. The one with the mark on his cheek, gray and faint below his eye, and the one who looks for it. Okay, this is the last one that I'm gonna share today before I go into the rest of what I'm talking about. This one is kind of funny to me because, as somebody who also, I write poetry, but I also read poetry, and I never wanted to be that South Asian poet who writes about mangoes because all of them write about mangoes. Every single South Asian poet has a poem where they mention a mango. And I was like, I do not want to do that. I'm going to write about any other fruit, but not mango. And lo and behold, I had a mango moment. And I was like, this is like I wrote this poem about a real moment. And, as it was happening, I was like, oh no, this is going to be a poem, isn't it? I'm going to be one of those mango people. And I've accepted it. And I love mangoes, so it's okay. I'm not that mad at it. Okay. To my delight, you had a mango. I was hoping you would. You cut the two long halves deftly and glided the knife around the seed. You scored one half of the mango and pushed the fruit into a bowl. A round puddle of juice remained on that side of the skin. You carefully lifted it, cupped in your hand to your lips like poetry. I watched closely. There was nothing else in the world worth seeing. You drank of it as I was drinking of you. I said I was jealous. I wanted a cut of mango like that. I gazed out the window, thinking of you lifting me to your lips, that gently, earnestly, your eyes half closed. I heard the rhythm of your knife tapping on the cutting board. I turned, and you walked towards me, not knowing you held everything I wanted. Ah, yes, the other half of the mango skin was in your hand, with its pool of juice. I drank. I saw in your eyes what I wished to see. There was something else about this poem. Oh, right. So something that I think this is a really good transition to the rest of my talk, because I also feel like this poem is about a mango, but it's also about love and like the yearning and the yearning for like this physical aspect of love, right? Like there is like, sure, we want to be touched sexually, but I don't necessarily only mean that. There's something about like these little actions, the little like glances, even like the graze. I talk in the first poem about the careless grazing of a hand. These little moments that not only come to be imbued with meaning, but like so much desire. Like if anyone else, like the random mango guy on the street, we have random mango guys here. I don't know if you do, but we have random people who sell mangoes. Were to touch your hand or like to cut a mango, like I probably would not see it in the same way or have the same feeling. But it's just the way that touch and like seeing your lover like interact with something physically can even bring up that erotic feeling within you. And it's like when you focus in on those moments, it's like it's magical. Like who else or what other feeling besides love can make you like imbue moments with that much meaning and intensity? So, all right, I'll go into the rest of, that kind of brings up those questions about love and why is it so intense? So these are the questions I hope we can start to explore through the rest of what I'll talk about today. Why am I drawn to certain people? Why do I have a certain type? Some of you have a type. Why do some people always end up with toxic partners? And why do we need to feel love? Or do we even need to feel love? I'm going to answer these questions through these sort of the views of different different fields of knowledge. So one is through biology and understanding the evolutionary and biological side of like how love develops. Another side is psychological side. So through psychological literature, what does it tell us in our research and study of love and why people experience love? And then the third would be the philosophical or spiritual literature. What do they tell us about love? And I hope that, I cannot come to one answer for you about why we love. I think if I did, I don't know, I'd probably be like instantly enlightened or something. It would be pretty cool. But I hope that you can take what feels meaningful for you from each part and come to your own answer. And also know that as much as I did my research, a lot is missing here. And it's missing partially because I can't read every book in the world, but also because we're still trying to figure these things out. Also, there's the fact that, no one's getting research funding for figuring out love. It's really interesting because I think in some ways we believe and we know that love heals. I'll talk more about that. Like love can physically and emotionally heal. And on the other hand, in the scientific community, can you go to medical school and be like, yeah, I'm going to study the effects of love or like do research on like how love works? No, it's not such a credible field of study. So that's something else for us to think about. What is it about love that feels like this is not serious? And yet on the other hand, like we want it. A lot of us want it, I think, quite badly. All right, so I'll start with the evolutionary factors. And if you didn't like science class, good luck for this part. All right. So what does the research tell us are the evolutionary and biological factors in mate selection? How do we select who we'd like to mate with? And I think love is most closely associated with, choosing that partner. The first set is that we choose partners who have specifically we're looking for these features. Thick and healthy looking hair generally will be shiny. Okay, so there's hair, teeth. The whiter the teeth, the more likely we are to be attracted to them. Something about, eyes. Having larger eyes is considered to be more sexually attractive across cultural groups. And body structure. So depending on the gender of the person you might be attracted to, what you're looking for in your mate, people who are more masculine, are attracted to more masculine looking people, tend to be attracted to mates with have wider shoulders, a taller stance, a wider stance, wider jawline, the things that you might associate with like a more masculine body presence. And then for women, wider hips, a smaller waist, larger breasts, and some of these other things I mentioned about hair and things. And what these things all are signaling is supposedly health. So having shinier hair, having whiter teeth, having eyes that are larger but also that show more of the whites of your eyes are ways that we have been evolutionary prepared to recognize the health of our mate. So if they have those qualities, you can easily tell that they're healthy, and therefore, you know, you can mate with that person easier, and also that they have more reproductive viability. So having that certain breast to waist to hip ratio and the markers that I mentioned in people who are masculine, those are also markers of reproductive viability. So how likely you are to have healthy offspring with those people. We also look for facial symmetry. For some reason, the research shows that if you wear red, people are more likely to find you sexually attractive. That doesn't mean that if you wear red, everyone will be attracted to you. But if you think about it this way, if you were to see your partner, if you were to see someone you have a crush on wearing red versus another color, red would be more likely to stimulate the sort of sexual arousal in you. Also, there's something about the way people smell. So I don't necessarily mean their cologne, but a person's natural scent. So if you smell somebody's natural scent, it could be after they've sweat or just like that scent that people have. We tend to find people who have good genetic compatibility with us. We tend to find them as that they're good smelling. We like the way that they smell. So when I talk about the histocompatibility complex, it's something that tells us genetically that their genes are actually quite dissimilar from ours, and therefore if you were to mate with this person, it has the highest reproductive viability, meaning that like the more dissimilar your genes are, the more likely you are to have healthy offspring. But there are certain bounds of that. It's found that for some people within the same ethnic group, but still with a lot of genetic viability, you like their smell more. So like, for example, you know, I'm Indian, I'm more likely to find somebody who is also Indian, but maybe of a different like ethnic group within India or something like that, as to be good smelling and therefore genetically viable than someone who might be of a totally different ethnic group. But it's not that finding is not necessarily as salient. And good smell also, for some reason, it's found that in researches between men and women, that men find women who are currently in their most fertile stage, they find that their natural body scent is really good. They like the way they smell. It also, something to just take into context is that good genes are context dependent. So if you are in a society or in a culture where physical strength is more valued, men with broader shoulders and muscles are seen as more attractive. However, if you're in a culture or a social setting where intelligence and wealth are more valued, then signs of those traits, like the clothes you wear, so like, you know, your wealth can be signaled by the clothes you wear and the brand names you're wearing. Your language or your accent that you speak with, your hairstyle might be seen as more attractive, or people might pay more attention to those things. So what actually is happening in the body when you are falling in love, or when you are developing longer term love with someone? So these things, I'm mostly talking about romantic and sexual love here. However, these hormonal and neurotransmitter kind of interactions that we're talking here are also present in maternal and paternal bonds as well. And I'll name which ones of those are relevant there. We talk a lot about love as a chemical reaction, like love is just a chemical reaction in the brain, but I think we need to be specific about what we mean by that. So the first would be oxytocin, which some of you might be familiar with. Interestingly, so the first two, oxytocin and vasopressin, are both involved in the fight or flight response as well, and in trauma response. So oxytocin is released in the body to feel a sense of immobility, but without fear. So if you think about like being hugged by somebody that you really love, you don't feel the need to fight it. You feel like, oh, I can rest, immobile, but without fear. Security, social engagement. So when this is released in the body, you feel like you can bond with another person. Also, it's released when you feel defensiveness against threat to your kin, so people who you see as part of your family or your chosen family, and against your partner. That's why some of us feel jealous when we see someone looking at our partner, because we see a threat. It's released after and during male and female orgasm, and I'm using the biological sex terms here, and during labor and delivery, and also overcoming survival challenges. I really want to note that here, that there is a strong link in the biological and psychological literature that feeling love, feeling feelings of love is very important, just because like we literally need to feel the regular release of these hormones to survive. There have been studies on infants that show that infants who do not regularly receive like cuddles and basically loving attention from adults do not release enough of these hormones, and actually they their immune systems can suffer, or they, in some studies that happened, I believe it was post World War II, when there were a lot of children who were estranged from parents, they could literally actually pass away, which is very sad, if they were not like hugged and loved enough in infancy. So there's this really strong evidence that you need to actually feel loved, because it like helps your body function. That's especially if you see in the case of vasopressin. I think it's very evident here, because so we see that it's involved in the development of selective attachment to a partner. So I guess to just tease things apart here just for 1 second, for people who have their biological sex is female, after orgasm, they release more oxytocin, and that feeling of security, cuddliness, and people who have their biological sex is male release more vasopressin. So they have more of this. The more that they have an orgasm with that particular partner, the more likely they are to feel attached to that partner. And it's a protectiveness, a protective feeling that develops over that partner. It's involved in feelings of sexual motivation, wanting to have sex, bonding, and then also water reabsorption by various tissues in the body, such as the kidneys. So again, this is something that is involved in like the actual like survival and functioning of your body. You need this release of this hormone. And it's related to feeling love. The second set would be testosterone and estrogen, which you might be familiar with as reproductive hormones. They are involved in sex drive, sexual arousal, sexual signaling. So when you're falling in love and feeling sexual arousal, these are the culprits here. And also aggression. And I think psychologically and biologically, love and aggression, and sex and aggression are so linked. Even when we look at mythology, Greek mythology, for example, Aphrodite and Ares are married. Aphrodite is the goddess of love, and Ares is the god of war. Aggression and love can be so linked for us. They, as close as we get to people, as intimate as we get with people, that's as much as they can really get on our nerves and push our buttons sometimes. Also, there's that experience that a lot of people have of, you're so cute, I want to choke you. And in some ways, like aggression and love can feel very similar in the body, like it's very intense kind of feeling. And then the fourth set are part of the dopamine circuit or the reward circuit in the brain. These are all neurotransmitters. And these are those feelings of love, of pleasure, of developing a wanting or a liking of someone. Interestingly, they're also involved in executive functioning, which means motivation, planning, your working memory. And the more dopamine that is like released, the more motivated you are. So it makes me kind of think of the ways in which sometimes when people have a really good relationship in their life, they see themselves flourishing in other areas of their life. There's also the fact that, when you're in a moment of high sexual arousal, like you're really thinking a lot about sex, when we're talking about testosterone and estrogen, that can also cloud your judgment and cloud your working memory. So these two can kind of be at war sometimes, I guess. And also sleep. Serotonin is quite, as much as it's involved in these feelings of happiness, it's also involved in sleep. And that's something I've actually seen a lot of clients, people talking about, when they have a good relationship, it's easier to get to sleep at night. It also doesn't hurt to get cuddled. A cuddle doesn't hurt. What are some caveats to seeing love as totally this like biochemical reaction? So there's a lot that we learned, right? But it can't all just be explained as biochemical, because first of all, we don't only fall in love with fertile people. When someone hits menopause, they don't stop falling in love, and people don't stop falling in love with them. There's also plenty of people who, have fertility issues, and it's not like we can like smell it out and like not be attracted to them. We also don't only fall in love with people who we can biologically produce offspring with, right? Like the whole queer community knows this. So love, for the feeling of love, is not only about mating and about producing offspring. It seems to be something more than that, and even something more than simple companionship or social bonding. We also don't feel love for every person who is physically attractive. So as much as I named those traits of what is most likely to make you physically attracted to somebody, every time we see those traits, we don't feel love. I'm sure there are plenty of times that you've talked about celebrities that you're attracted to, and as much as you know that they're like very sexy looking person, do you feel like you're falling in love with them? No. And this also does not explain why love hurts, which I'm trying to find an answer to. It's my life goal. Because the magnitude, the pain of loss of love, like a heartbreak, that hurts a lot, right? The loss, and not even a heartbreak of a romantic relationship, losing somebody you love, that hurts more than losing a job, losing like so many things. Like it hurts a lot. It's not evolutionarily adaptive for love to hurt that much. We get rejected by romantic and sexual partners quite a bit. And what would be the most evolutionarily adaptive thing would be for us to recover from those really quickly and to be able to find a new mate, because that ensures the most quick reproduction of the species, that we can move on and find a new mate. And yet love hurts so much. Why does it hurt? It hurts to feel it. It hurts when you're in it. It also hurts when you lose it. So the biological explanation doesn't explain that part. We also, when we talk about the experience of feeling love, it's like, if you can remember what that is like, we seem to be responding to something psychologically, like it hits in our mind first, and then we feel the biological reaction, versus I think less people might say they feel it as like a biological reaction, and then their brain recognizes I'm in love with that person. So we seem to choose people with our brains first or something. So then, I mean, that's not to throw out all of the biological evidence, but let's add another layer to it through understanding psychological factors. So the first thing that research shows us about why do we fall in love with certain people is there is some balance to be found between comfort and mystery. So the first thing is, we tend to look for traits in partners that make us feel comfortable, that remind us of situations, people, cultures that we feel secure in already. So things that can make us choose someone as a partner is vicinity. Like literally, if you are in their physical proximity, we're more likely to choose people as a partner if they're close, like in close physical range of us, or the more times we see them. Isolation, also, like literally, like there's no other choice, is also likely to make us pick a partner. And other aspects of shared experience. So you're more likely to fall in love with somebody who you can either relate to on a cultural level, or maybe there's some other part of your experience, such as you both went to med school together, or you both had a very similar upbringing in similar neighborhood or something like that. On the other hand, we also tend to fall in love with people where there is some aspect of distance or mystery. You know, there is this aspect of like not knowing this thing about a person, of something about them is unknowable by me, and I seek to know it. The yearning cannot exist. The erotic spark also cannot exist if you're too comfortable with someone. If they're too comfortable, they feel too much like family. If they feel like a very almost like too knowable, the erotic spark cannot be there. Eroticism grows best in a situation where there is something even forbidden about the other, something forbidden, something that is not quite like a match. That said, if someone is completely different from you in every way, if there's really no ground, there's no security, there's no feeling that there is a comfort in the relationship, or if someone is very erratic or impulsive, that also is not going to spark eroticism in you, most likely. So there has to be a balance between the two, a balance between mystery and comfort. And where people fall on that spectrum, it's different for everyone. There has to be space for intimacy and closeness, but also a space to be like, oh, my partner is their own person. There's something about them the way they are to the world that I admire and I'll also never totally know. There's other behavioral factors that the psychological literature tells us might make us more likely to fall in love with someone. One is alcohol consumption. I don't know if I call it love, but like you're more likely to be attracted to somebody after drinking alcohol. You're more likely to be attracted to someone after exercising for some reason. To find people attractive after you have exercised. And in high anxiety situations, you're less likely to be able to choose a partner. And not only high anxiety situations, but if you're somebody who is like very anxious, it's in general, like picking a partner and feeling comfortable with someone makes it harder to choose a partner. Really central to what the psychological literature tells us about how we fall in love and how we stay in love is research in the area of developmental psychology. So Bowlby is one such pioneer in the area of attachment. I think attachment is a big subject nowadays. A lot of people are talking about, secure attachment, anxious attachment, disorganized attachment, things like that. So before I talk about, I go more into attachment, it's understood that attachment is that feeling of there's security, there's predictability, there's comfort in a relationship. And this can be present in a variety of types of relationships. It's theorized that we first develop attachment with our primary caregiver. For most of us, it was probably our mother, but it doesn't have to be. We all have had different primary caregivers. And that's where we first start to develop these building blocks of attachment. Once we develop that first model for attachment and how intimacy grows with that primary caregiver, we transfer that same model into other relationships in life. Relationships with friends as we grow up, with romantic partners, and even sometimes in work and other relationships, how secure we feel and comfortable we feel in relationships. The first part of attachment relationships is something called the secure base. And the secure base means that when it's like this person that is predictable, and that if you go off and explore, if you need to be free, if you need to have some individual time for a while, that this person will be there for you when you need to come back. So if you think about that, if you look at this picture of these children, when a child is a firstborn, a newborn, they have to like physically be next to their mother at all times. After a few months, maybe they're crawling like within a few inches of the mom. Then over time, a few feet, then in a different room, then outside, and then they're off with their friends somewhere else, riding their bike somewhere. But at every stage, especially in the early stages, if you think about it, it's as like the child needs to be able to look back and see that their mom is still there. So they need to have freedom, and they also need to know that, but when I'm done wanting this freedom, you'll still be here. The second aspect of attachment is safe haven, which is that if there's ever a time where I'm emotionally feeling unstable, dysregulated, scared, angry, that you are someone safe that I can go back to. And I can predictably know that you will protect me, you will comfort me, you will be delighted in what I have to share and all the fun and exciting things I have to share with you. And you will help me organize my feelings. So if I tell you, I don't know, I'm really upset about this, I'm also angry, you'll help me kind of just like name those feelings. The third would be proximity maintenance. And this would be the ability to like predict basically the physical availability of this person. And as we'll go through this, we'll see that everyone has different needs and different experiences with these things. Some people might have grown up in a home where literally the parents were around and home all the time, and therefore you might enjoy a relationship more later in life where you're physically around each other more, versus some of us grew up in childhoods where parents were on business trips a lot. Maybe we grew up in like a village where, you're not necessarily with your family a lot, but you're like shared within different households or something like that. So we have less of a need to be physically with the primary caregiver, and therefore we might be more comfortable in relationships where there's like a little more physical independence, where people might be living separately, or at least not seeing each other all day. So we all have different needs for those things. And then fourth is separation distress. So actually there should be a healthy level of distress at separation. If we think about this in childhood, especially in early childhood, if a baby is separated from their mom for, let's say, 15 minutes is a significant amount of time for an infant. So if a baby is separated from their mom for 15 minutes and they do not cry, that's actually an issue. We think it's pretty healthy for a child of that age to cry when separated from their mother, as they should. That's the evolutionary adaptability of it. They should want to be in the presence of their mother. So as we age, of course, that time should increase to a certain extent. But some people also have these experiences early in life where the availability of the caregiver is so inconsistent that they just that part of them kind of shuts down and they become numb to separation. Those are people who kind of might grow up being more avoidant or having a lot more trouble with intimacy. There are also some people who might have had a caregiver that never separated from them, and they never really developed much comfort with being separate from someone. So being separate can cause, even for a small amount of time, can cause a great level of anxiety, or something like someone not replying to your message within 10 minutes can cause like a great level of anxiety. So there is a level of distress that is healthy. Like, you don't want to be like so easy to separate from someone you love. At the same time, you don't want to be so distressed by it that you can't function. So just to go through these three major theoretical areas of psychology and their perspectives on what is the role of love. So the first and earliest would be the psychodynamic or psychoanalytic theory area. This is who we associate, first associate with Freud, but there are like many other people, theorists in this area, like Lacan and stuff like that. So someone from this theoretical perspective might say, or a therapist, let's say, from this theoretical perspective might say that our deepest wounds, which are deep down inside of us and are unconscious, which end up driving our behavior, were caused by a perceived lack of love. So those wounds are caused by a time where we wanted love and we were abandoned, or were met with indifference. And finding love again in our adult life can help us acknowledge and repair our repressed desires and drives, and can help us to live more freely. So through experiencing love as an adult, we can repair these older wounds and these older maladaptive relationship cycles that we learned in childhood. So love is pretty central and important, and learning to love is quite good for your mental health. I'll add another layer to that on the next slide, but the next would be humanistic or existentialist theorists, and they would say that like love is a basic human need. So in the existentialist perspective, what they might say is that love brings meaning to our life, and by nature, it is the way to cope with existential dread and loneliness. An existentialist might say that something like depression, a feeling of loneliness, depression, is a natural part of life. We must accept that. We can't pretend like we're never going to feel depressed or lonely ever. That said, the way to deal with those feelings is to acknowledge them and also find meaning. And the way to find meaning in our life is through love, is to give love and to receive love. A behaviorist might say that love also is essential to some level, that love activates the reward system to drive our learning of adaptive and survival-centered behavior. So, we can use love as a reward, or love rewards us for things like, having a family, which is adaptive for the survival of our species. And sometimes those circuits are misaligned, right? Sometimes we feel love for people who are not good for us, that are not healthy for us in some way. So they would say you have to kind of relearn in a different way. A big part of what I was talking about from the psychodynamic perspective, and another answer to why sometimes we might love people that are not good for us, or that why we might get into these relationships that seem very similar over time, and like we're repeating a certain pattern, is this idea of repetition compulsion. And what this means is we have this repeated unconscious attempt. I want to highlight that word unconscious because it means that we're not aware of why we do it. You can become aware of it, but it's just a pattern and you're not sure why you repeat it. It's this attempt to rewrite our own history by repeating the same dysfunctional story across relationships, hoping that you can change it so it will turn out differently this time. So maybe you had a father who was really emotionally distant and you really wished he would notice you and pay attention to you. You might find, this is very reductive, I mean, I'm just giving a simple example, but you might find later in life that you tend to be attracted to emotionally distant people who also, there's this feeling in you that you can't quite, touch the core of them, or you can't quite get from them what you wish you could have. The way out of this pattern is to just know your story, to become aware that, yeah, I have this pattern, and also to become aware of where it came from, to become aware that if it is the case that you have this relationship with your father, that that's what happened to me. And then you can also, once you're aware of your story, it doesn't control you anymore. So once you bring it to your awareness, you can start to find ways out. It doesn't mean you won't. Maybe you still like people who are a little more on the distant side. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But you'll be able to advocate for yourself, and you'll be able to tell when someone just doesn't have the emotional maturity to meet you where you're at. Whether that means to kind of help them get there, or it's time to say bye. And then finally, then there's these questions about why we love that I say questions because I don't necessarily know that any philosophical or spiritual tradition claims to have the answer. But this is another way that humans have tried to explore this question. So we look at the West, Plato. He would say that love is a value, and it's a very important value to be cultivated, because love can drive our desire for greater understanding of the self and the world. So whatever we have love for, if it is something that is of a good virtue, it can help us change the world and change ourselves. Vedanta, so this would be Vedic philosophy from traditions of ancient India, that love of a person, of a thing or a place, is driven by love of something beyond the object. So when we say that, I love my husband, or I love my wife, or whatever, partner, while part of us has love for those person's individual traits, the things that make them them, the feeling of love in us is actually a drive to touch something within them that is even beyond their identity. That there is a spark of this unifying reality of all consciousness, of ultimate truth within them. And when we feel love, that is the connection we're feeling, the connection between our deepest essence and theirs. This is almost a direct quote from one of the Upanishads, which I think Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And love is a journey to knowing oneself. Through the act of practicing love and practicing loving, we come to know ourselves deeper and deeper, and vice versa. The more we know ourselves, the more we know how to love others and how to feel love. So it's pretty important. And then I kind of grouped a bunch of mystical traditions together because I find that their messages are the same, whether we're talking about St. John the Baptist, St. Francis of Assisi, Teresa of Avila, Hafiz, Rabia, Rumi, I can name them all, Catherine of Assisi, Mirabai, all of these mystics from many different religions around the world, and sects of different religions. They would tell you the same thing, which is that the heart is the only trustworthy site of revelation, not the brain, not the mind. The heart is the only trustworthy site of divine revelation. Love is the main root of knowing the divine and of knowing the world. So anything else that we try, we're really fooling ourselves. Love is the only way. And finally, I thought I'd throw some Marxism in there, because why not? So a Marxist might say that the language and etiquette of love, so they don't actually focus on the feeling of love or the emotional attachment, but they do bring to mind that they do bring to light that the language and etiquette of love, the practices of love, are meant to further mire society in classism, sexism, and other systemic qualities. And I think when we go back to the first slide of what I was talking about mating preferences, I think, yeah, like even if you think about the way that I was talking about, it was like very heteronormative, right? Talking about male and female and mating and even what we're attracted to in terms of wealth and status and what signals rank. Even though those are evolutionarily adaptive ways of choosing a mate, they also, that rank, the whole thing about humanity and judging each other based on rank is very much reflected in current manifestations of hierarchy and of classism, racism, all these different things. So I think it's also aware, something to be aware of like love itself is not necessarily something to be afraid of or to be it's not a bad thing per se, even though it could be very painful. It's not a bad thing, but we can be critical of the ways we love, of who we love, why we love who we love, who we see as lovers or not. I think there can be we could be reflective about that. So let's see. Hello. So oh no, all of my slides were not moving, and I just saw that. Okay. So I hope you still understood everything that I was saying. If anyone has any questions or anything like that, I'd be happy to take it now. But otherwise, I think that's pretty much all I had to share. So just see if anyone has any comments or questions. Hello, I can't hear you yet.
Hi, love.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for walking us through our hearts like that. And I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you didn't. I was just so happy to hear that. Oh, thank you for sharing these insights about love. Thank you. I'm sorry if anyone said anything during the presentation because I didn't have this window up. So if you commented or had a question, if you want to repeat it now, I will answer it. Sorry.
No, it was great. I mean, like we really there's a couple of lines that there are a couple of key moments that we were like, oh, and there's a couple of people here that were listening to it, had it blast loud. And very insightful, very insightful. I think that the way of thinking about multi dimensions of our heart and just how to, I don't know, return back to our heart. So good. Thank you, Sharez, right here. Yes. Where can we find you, love?
You can find me on Instagram at Dr.Samosa. SAMOSA, like the snack.
So we have a question here from Kamal. Can you explain what you mean when you said the heart is the site of the revolution?
Oh, I maybe you misheard me. So in the mystical traditions, they would say the heart is the site of revelation. So when we talk about divine revelation, whether it is about the self or about the world, it doesn't happen in the mind, it happens in the heart. And it happens through knowing the heart.
Amazing. Amazing. So the heart is the site of revelation.
Revelation, yeah.
And so you were, Kamal, got it. Thank you, Kamal. And so at Doctor, could you say it one more time?
At Dr. Samosa.
Absolutely amazing. On IG, So much gratitude to you. So much love to you. Thank you for reminding us of our hearts as we go into spring. Please clutch on to your hearts and your loved ones. We will see you here next week. We have 2 more sessions to wrap up April and to wrap up this winter edition. Next week, we'll be having our burlesque variety show with Cyrus Marcus Ware as host, featuring Raven Wings, Zyra Vanity Lee, and Wrong Note Rusty, followed by the part 2 of Christine Sue and Ronnie Ali's grief workshops. That's on Tuesday, April 13th. And following that, we're closing with Our Existence is Our Resistance, a QTBIPOC seniors gathering being facilitated by Leslie Lee Cam. So much love and gratitude to Dr. Sarika Persaud. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have made connections with you. And for anybody who was watching, if you're watching live or follow up, we'll have the video stay on the Across Boundaries Facebook page. So much love to everybody. Mwah. Have a good night.